Let's all go to the
mall.
Let's all go to the
mall.
Let's all go to the
mall
to get ourselves a
horror.
As you wander, you look around for potential gifts. Maybe she'd like a bottle of cologne or one of those colorful little scarves. Ooh, looks like Spencer's is having a sale. Maybe she'd like the t-shirt that has Big Bitch printed on it in giant gold Gothic script. You chuckle and pass it by, even though it would certainly suit her.
Dear Nancy, 37 years of friendship, 15 of them spent walking this mall every morning, and now it's like the silver sneakers are dead to you, like I'm dead to you. And heaven knows I understand what it's like to want male companionship after decades alone. I miss my Charlie every day. But dropping us like a bad habit just so you can spend time with a first man over 65 who looks your way? Well, if I can't say something nice, I won't say anything at all.
I love it so much. I love it. I love it. She's so mad and so like this is her friend, and I just think that's so great.
Well, thank you. I absolutely adore yours too. And I was skimming the table of contents. I'm like, gift for the bitch. That I understand already exactly what we are talking about here.
Yeah. So what I love about your story is it is like it's about friendship. I feel like it's really like about friendship and figuring things out when things change. Figuring out what exactly is going on is just really fun. I just had a lot of fun reading it.
Excellent. Appreciate that.
Well, I'm curious about how you came up with the idea for the story, because thinking about like malls, like they're mall walkers, like old ladies who like walk in the mall before it opens, and that's not really something that I think about when I think about malls. And I was wondering if there was something that, like, what made you come up with that idea?
Well, even though at the moment I work with plants, I am a former geriatric psych nurse. And so for
Oh,
most of my life, I've worked with little old people. And the ones that I saw that sort of were in the best position when they came to us were people who had a lot of strong social bonds still. And weirdly enough, malls really give these folks a great sort of old people hangout spot, just the same way it would be for younger people.
so since you've worked with elderly people, I have to ask, like, have you known like people like Nancy and I mean Nancy in particular, because you really get it's her letters that are being written, so
Yes.
like her point of view.
Yes,
Yeah.
actually, Nancy's voice overall was inspired by one of my very favorite residents who um she had fairly severe Alzheimer's. And for some folks, you don't really lose a lot of your physical abilities when you have that. So she was very, very vocal. She was able to walk around and do all sorts of stuff. And she'd get mad at me every single morning because she'd wake up and she'd walk around for a little bit and she'd come back and there was an old woman in her bed every single morning. And she'd get so mad. And she couldn't remember that her room had been changed about 6 months earlier.
Oh no.
Yeah. So every single morning
Oh.
it was the same confusion and upset. And she would come to me with this perfect, prim little old lady upset. Beg your pardon, Pines, but I cannot take this any longer.
I
So
love
what
that.
about you? What inspired you to write this story?
Um, there were a few things. I immediately knew that I wanted to do something about kiosks
Mhm.
because I have I don't like mall kiosks. I think they're weird because like half the time I don't go to the mall a lot, but like a lot of times they're empty and they're just like these almost like ruins, little ruins that like that, through the mall. And when there are shops there, it always feels like they're like watching the people there, like watching. So I knew that I wanted to do kiosks. And then the second thing was I wanted to write second person. I'd never written a second person story before, although I'd read a fair amount. And I started out writing fan fiction. So I wrote fan fiction a
Same.
lot in like romance fan fiction. And when you think about second person for romance fan fiction, usually it's like self-insert or like Y/N, or like your name. And
Something's
it's like
getting inserted no matter what.
something exactly. And so it's like so and I have a lot of trouble reading those because oftentimes it's clear that the YN or the self insert is not me, right? Like it's not an older fat person. It's probably somebody younger and prettier. And so I've never really gotten a lot of joy from that. I do know I've read more horror, and that's a little bit different because it's more like you are embodying the character um, in a way that it's not you. It's like you then become the character, which is different. But I wanted to do it more like self-insert. So I I don't know if this works, but it's
It
like,
worked.
okay,
Yeah,
good.
it did
So
work.
my
It was
so
very fun.
yay. Yeah. So I hope that when you read it, you were like, you had like have a bitch in mind. You're like, oh, I kind of have an idea of like who this might be that I'm shopping for.
It's very cool. And I think your shopkeeper was sort of the perfect feel that you needed for a kiosk, especially that element you're talking about of how you try to walk past them and there's this sort of almost predatory following you as
Predatory.
you're walking through the mall. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
predatory is really good. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
that was definitely part of it. Good.
The first page, the way that you sort of built some of the sensory details going into there, it really added to that not quite unsettling feeling, but the fact you knew that an unsettling feeling was approaching. It was
Mhm.
very, very well written, really drew me in. And the actual gift for the bitch, that was fantastic. Reading that,
Oh,
I'm like,
thank you.
ooh, that was a
Yeah.
good one. That sounds very good there.
Like I want that too. Uh yeah, I enjoyed reading your story too. Yours is a bit more lighthearted. It's just really sweet. It's like somebody who's clearly hurting. And and at first I was like, why is this like this isn't I'm like, this isn't hard. Like this is an old lady who's like lost a friend. And then I was like, and then as I read, like you did a really great job in sort of like, dripping or like, the way that you um let details drop, you know, as we're going through. And as soon as I read it, as soon as I got to the end, I went back and I reread it. And like reading it the second time was like a whole different experience because I got like everything. Even you can cut this if this is like a spoiler, like the very first couple of sentences. I was just like,
Mhm.
how did I miss it? Like, oh, that was so
Excellent. That was
satisfying.
really, really what I was hoping to do. I love media where you really need to watch it twice to
Yeah.
understand it completely because you don't get a lot of the inherent foreshadowing your first go around.
Yeah, yeah. Or things that are just sort of, it's like, here's a little detail, and you're like, well, that's nice, but it's not relevant. Like, that's my favorite thing when it's like, that's not relevant. And then it's like, oh, actually, that was
Was
really, that was relevant. Good job, writer, doing it that way.